All right, kids, here we go. Hopefully you noticed that this was the difference of perfect squares, this being 8 squared, and this being x squared, and it's got difference. So we are going to factor it. Because the 64 comes first, that means the 8s have to come first, which means it can't be this one or this one. Don't get stuck into thinking it always is this one. I bet a lot of you picked that one, but the 8s came first. So, and then because it's got a minus, we gotta do plus, and we gotta do minus. And then obviously the x's come first. The only way to get a negative x squared is a positive times a negative. So you choice 2. This is one we haven't really covered a lot of yet. And we will very quickly. It's not a very difficult concept. We're going to take an initial investment of 2,500, and notice those are all the same. And instead of it being 1, this 1 actually stands for 100%. We're going to add the interest rate. Well, the interest rate in this case was 3%, but it's not 3, and it's not 0.3. 3%, remember, is 0.03. So that should have made this problem a little bit easier. The only one with 0.03 is choice A, 0.03. And then we're going to do it for 4 years, and the exponent becomes 4. I think I gave you guys the wrong answer the other day. I think I just accidentally picked the wrong one. And the exponent's 4, and that's all that is. This interest rate shows an increase of 3%. If it was a decrease of 3%, or you were losing money, then instead of adding 0.3, you'd subtract. It would be 1 minus 0.03, or in some cases you might see 0.97. But that's not the case. All right, next problem. All right, simplifying 2 square roots of 45. This should have been pretty easy. We'll rewrite it, square roots of 45. And some of you keep forgetting to bring the 2 down. We won't. I'm going to rewrite it as a perfect square and not a perfect square. Hopefully, remember to use the half rule. We'll cut 45 divided by 2, and that gives us 22.5. That tells us where to start looking. So the first perfect square into 22.5 is 16, but 16 does not go into 45. The next perfect square is 9. 9 goes in, so I'll rewrite it as the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. Now, what is the square root of 9? 3. So this becomes 6 square roots of 5. Another strategy for doing that, just so you know, for the Regents exam, you can take this, type it directly into your calculator. And if you type that directly into your calculator, I'm just getting a calculator out right now. If you type that directly into your calculator, 2 square roots of 45, you will get 13.416. And if you type this one directly in your calculator, you get 13.416. So on the multiple choice, that's kind of a cheating way to forget if you forget how to do the simplifying of radicals. Hopefully you won't forget that. Let's go to the next page. All right, so how do I remember, what do I have to do to remember if something is going to be a function? I'll try to see if I can view this a little bit. There we go. How do I know if something's going to be a function? Well, something is a function if it passes the vertical line test. So in this case, this one passes the vertical line test because no matter where I put a vertical line, it will only hit it once. This one passes the vertical line test because no matter where I draw it, it will only hit it once. Same thing here. However, as soon as I get to this one, which is the answer, and I hit a vertical line, it hits it more than once, which means it is not a function. All right, hopefully got that one right. Timmy bought a skateboard and 2 helmets for a total of $D. If each helmet costs H dollars, the cost of the skateboard could be represented by what? He bought a skateboard and 2 helmets. So he bought 1 skateboard and 2 helmets. I have no idea why anybody would spend buy 2 helmets, but whatever. And that cost him $D. So basically, just asking you to solve for the cost of the skateboard. So if I wanted to solve for the cost of the skateboard, I would just subtract oops, subtract 2 helmets. So 1 skateboard costs D minus 2 helmets. Choice 3. Boy, that was an easy problem. I thought it was going to be harder. All right, moving on. All right, if you remember correctly, and we did a little bit of this, I'm not going to be able to get all, am I going to be able to get all these on there? View, zoom out. Okay, I can get all of them on there. Just let me, there's the function. This is the graph of the equation y equals the absolute value of x plus 2. And if you remember correctly, that takes it from the origin, and because it's adding 2 to the x, remember when you add in the middle with the x's, it goes backwards 2. So that moved over 2. So all they want to do is figure out which one represents this. Well, on the Regents exam, I will expect you to just type that thing in your calculator, and it would tell you which one is the right answer. But if you remember correctly, the negative, this negative, just takes a function and flips it upside down. So that's why it's going to have the same vertex, but it's going to flip it upside down, which makes it choice 4. All right, don't forget about that negative. But you can also always just type that into the y equals on your calculator, and it will tell you which is the right answer. Okay. Remember when we talking about solving systems of equations that are graphed? Well, the solving is always the points of intersection. So, which of the following is a solution? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That looks like it's the point 8, 9. This one's really odd. It's like -2, positive, almost positive. Not quite -2, not quite +2, but that has nothing to do with the problem. The answer is choice 1. That should have been a simple problem. All right, Byron is 3 years older than Doug. The product of their ages is 40. Do you remember we always assign the variable to whoever's mentioned second? So let D equal Doug's age. Byron is 3 years older than Doug. So if we take Doug's age and we add 3, we get Byron's age. Byron's age. And it said the product of their ages is 40. So I can take D times D plus 3, and I get 40. By the way, this is a very hard way to do the problem. I'm going to show you in a second the easier way. This gives us D squared plus 3D equals 40. Bring the 40 over, I get D squared plus 3D minus 40 equals 0. That's a 0, by the way, not 6. Equals 0. And then my factoring, they multiply to -40, and they add up to +3. That would be, hopefully you got it, plus 8 minus 5. If I do my t-chart, this gives me D equals -8. Dougie can't be negative, so Dougie has to be 5. And if Dougie's 5, Byron is 8. And they asked how old Dougie is. Now, giving that is the hard way to do the problem. The easier way to prove the problem was this. If these all represent Doug's age, and Byron's 3 years older, couldn't I just say this is Doug, and Byron is either 13 for 10 plus 3, or 11 for 8 plus 3, or 8 for 5 plus 3, or 7, because I'm just adding 3 to each of these. And this, I would see, multiplies to 40, which would give me the right answer. Now, that's much easier than all of this. But I hope you all get this work. All right, scrolling down. All right, so relative error is a very, you've done it in earth science, so I will review it and cover it with you, but relative error is defined as, I always define error in things like this is the difference over original, but in a problem like this, that's not really helpful. It's always going to be some kind of difference, and in this case, it's going to be the actual minus the estimated over the actual. And you should have learned this in earth science. So it's what you figured out, the estimated, you figure out what the actual should be, you subtract off your estimate, and you put it over what the actual is. Did I spell that right? I think I did. So let's do a little bit of work. The actual dimensions are 2.6 by 6.9. And if I multiply those, 2.6 times 6.9, I get 17.94. The estimated was 2.5 times 6.8. And if I multiply those, I get 17. So if I come up here, actual minus estimate is 0.94, all over what the original actual is, which is 17.94. And if I divide those, 0.94 divided by 17.94, I get 0.0523. So that would be 0.0523. Make sense? I hope so. All right. Hopefully by now you know y equals lines. Y equals lines are horizontal and x equals lines are vertical, which means these two can't be the right answer. The next thing you got to recognize is that there's no equal sign. See, there's no line underneath there, which means it's a dotted line, and therefore it must be choice A. And greater than means we shade up, if you remember correctly. All right, moving on. Which set of data has to be quantitative? Do you remember quantitative means it has to deal with numbers? The other one was qualitative. Do you all remember? Qualitative. And qualitative has to do with the qualities of it. Purple, green, smells funny, ugly, whatever. Those are all the qualities. Quantitative has to do with some kind of numbers. So which of the following can be classified as quantitative? The first names of students in chess club. Those are probably qualitative. What's their names? Ages of students. That's numbers. That's numbers. That could be it. Probably the answer. Hair colors, qualities. Favorite sports, qualities. First names, qualities. Those are people's names. This is the only thing that has a number associated, and that's why qualitative. All right. So now we got to reach back. We only did a few days of probability. We're going to do a little bit of review for it because probability is not that difficult. The only thing you got to decide is if it's going to be and, or we're going to use the word or. Does something have to happen and something else have to happen and something else happen, or is it the case where this can happen or this can happen? And if you remember correctly, this is multiplication and this is addition. So if you look here, we want two heads and one tail. We don't want one head or a tail. We want two heads or a tail. We want a tail, a heads, and then a heads, and then a tails. Well, the probability of getting a heads is 1/2. Probability of getting another heads is 1/2. And the probability of getting tails is 1/2. Here comes the hard part. I'm not adding them because I don't want or. I want all of it to happen. I want a heads, and I want another heads, and I want another heads. So I'm going to multiply. And when I multiply fractions, you can do it in your calculator if you want. You just multiply the numerators, you get 1. You multiply the denominators, and you get 8. Not 6, you get 8. So the answer is 1/8. Choice 1. All right, we're going to add these up. They couldn't have been a more easy question than this one. We're going to add these up. So we're going to add negative 3x squared and negative 5x squared. And if you remember correctly, oh, that's negative 8x squared. We don't change the exponent. So it can't be that one and it can't be that one. Then we're going to add, what's that? Oops, I can't tell if that's negative 7, so I got to erase. Okay, that's negative 7. And positive 6. So negative 7x plus 6x, that's negative x. So that is my answer, choice 1. And of course, 9 minus 4 is 5, not 13. A fraction is undefined only when the denominator equals 0. I could care less what the numerator is. Only when the denominator equals 0, and when you have a quadratic, that's equal to 0, you have to factor it. So x plus 6, x minus 1. Don't put 2 and 3 in there. They add up to 5, but the signs have to be different. So my two answers are x equals -6 and x equals 1. How many times did I tell you the math teachers love the 5s and 6s because you guys get confused with the 3 and 2 and not the 6 and the 1. So the answers are -6 and +1. So that's choice 1. We're almost halfway there. And we're, what, 15 minutes in. So hopefully we only got another 15 minutes. Slope. The slope formula is on your sheet. Remember, these are the y's. And these are the x's. And oh my gosh, please do it my way. I know the slope formula says y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But I've been doing this a long time. Please do it like this with parentheses. You make so many fewer mistakes. The second y is over here. That's 1. The first y is -3. Second x is 5. And the first x is 2. And a negative and a negative make a positive. So this becomes 4 over 3. Which is choice 4. You could have also graphed this thing. All right, I got to draw back on our exponents unit. When you have an exponent raised to an exponent, we multiply the exponents. Now, if you don't like that, you could just write 4x cubed times 4x cubed, because that's what squared means, write it twice, all over 2x. Or you can just take the 4 squared and 3 cubed squared, whatever. Regardless, I get 16x to the 6th all over 2x. And since 2 goes into 16 8 times, who has more x's, the numerator or the denominator? Hopefully you pick the numerator. How many more? It's got 5 more, so we'll make that a 5. So I end up with 8x to the 5th. All right, here's another topic we have to discuss. We'll do a day or two on this. This is very big, hard. Here's the thing you have to remember the most. Area of the shaded region is always defined as the area of the big shape minus the area of the small shape. Now, you all forget your formulas. We're going to be doing some work with that. But the big shape is the square, so the area of the square equals. Oh, that's not even asking the area of the shaded region. What is the area of the circle? They're just asking the area of the circle. Oh, my gosh. It's not even asking for the area of the shaded region. This is a much easier question than I thought. They already told you the area of the square is 36, so that makes all of the sides 6. So they just want to know what the area of the circle is. Well, the area formula of a circle, you'll remember, is pi r squared or r squared times pi. And since the radius, since this is 6, that's 6. Then half of it would be 3. So this would be 3 squared times pi, which is equal to 9 pi. We're going to do a little bit with that, so that might have been a difficult one. That's choice 1. All right, which point lies on the graph? So my equation is 3y plus 2x equals 8. And all you got to do is try the points. I always try the last ones. I don't know, it's just like human nature. They want you not to be able to do this, and they always put the right answer near the end. So I'm going to try the last one. I have no idea. 3 times y is -2. Don't put them in the wrong place, plus 2 times 7. Does that equal 8? Well, this is -6 plus 14 equals 8. Or 8 equals 8. Told you. Human nature, they like to put the right answer last. You can also solve for y and put that in your graphing calculator, but that's a lot more work. All right, let's move on. Axis of symmetry, x equals, notice it's not on your formula sheet. You need to know it. -b over 2a. That's a, that's b, that's c. So negative over 2, parentheses. So b is -3. A is 2. So that's -3, which is 3, over 2 times 2, which is 4. So x equals, y equals lines are not, x is a symmetry. X equals 3/4. All right, here's our box and whisker plot. If you remember, this is the min, this is the max. I haven't even read the question yet. This is quartile 1 or the lower quartile. This is quartile 2 or the upper, quartile 3 or the upper quartile. And this is quartile 2, otherwise known as the median. It's lower quartile, median, upper quartile. So what percent of these people are age 15 or older? So let me change pens real quick. 15 or older, right here. Well, if you remember correctly, everything here is broken up into 25%. So that's 25%, that's 25%, that's 25%, and that's 25%. So I want 15 or older. I want all of these. So that's 75%. All right. On to some trig. You can always pause and rewind this if you don't understand what's going on. What is the distance from campsite A to campsite B? So I'm looking for x. Now, I know it's a right triangle. I know you want to jump on sine, cosine, and tangent, but I was not given an angle, nor did they ask for an angle. If I'm not given an angle and they don't ask for an angle, then we are talking about Pythagorean theorem, where the hypotenuse is always C. And don't forget, the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90-degree angle. So this is going to be x squared plus 1300 squared equals 1700 squared. Now, here's a cool thing about this problem. If this is the hypotenuse, I know this side has to be smaller than that. So it can't be these two. So it has to be one of the others. Now, notice how close they are. So we better do some good math and be careful. X squared equals 1300 squared is plus 1690000 equals 1700. Why am I doing this, by the way? Squared. 17 squared is 289 and 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I subtract off 169, 1, 2, 3, 4, I get x squared equals 1, 2, 0, and then 4 more zeros. And then I take the square root of both sides. Second square root, second answer. And I get 1095.4451. And rounded to the nearest yard means it's twice 1. All right, we're getting closer. Okay, so it can be -2 and it can be 3. So whatever I pick, I want to make sure that I can be -2. Well, this one has to be greater than -3, but I can't be equal to -3. Can it? This is greater than or equal to -3. There is no -3, so that can't be worked. This says greater than -3. Well, that's greater than -3, and all these are, and then less than or equal to 4. Wait, can we equal 4? Can't equal 4, so that one makes that one no work. This one says, what happened? Somehow we went down. Where did it go? Oh, here we go. Sorry about that, guys. No idea what happened. This one says x has to be between, what the heck? It's not liking me touching the screen for some reason. Let's try this again. This one says that x has to be greater than -2, but it can't be equal to -2. So that can't be it either. This one says greater than or equal to -2, which is what this is, and less than 4. Wasn't 3 less than 4? And there's your answer. Tricky question. Be careful. Don't just look for the -2 and 3. I bet a lot of you picked this one. But it said greater than and less than and didn't say equal to. Roots. What's the first rule of factoring? I didn't hear you. Oh, it's because I'm a freaking computer. 3x, GCF. Take out the GCF. The GCF is 3x. I'm left with x minus 9. I'm done. T-chart. This one gives me 3x equals 0, or just x equals 0. And this one gives me x equals 9. 0, and we are almost done. Which occasion is the associative property? Well, I'm going to go through these. This one switches the order. Order switching is commutative. Commutative property. So that's order switching. This one is obviously, hopefully you know this, the distributive property. This one, oh, I know, I'm resting on the arrow keys. That's why it keeps going down. Stupid computer. It's actually a cool computer, but I'm resting on the arrow keys, so that's why it keeps flying down. I'll try to stop doing that. Oh my gosh. Where is it? Okay. This one, xy3, xy3. So the order stayed the same, but it's who's in the parentheses changed, and this is the associative property. Don't abbreviate associative property. We can abbreviate it there. This one, 3 plus x plus y, and then x plus y plus 3. The order changed. Not who's in the parentheses changed. Notice xy in parentheses, not who's. So this, again, is commutative property. That's the tricky commutative property. Be careful. You have to remember that that means or. It doesn't look like an A. Remember, this is an A, almost makes an A, right? That's an A. We're not using that. We're using or, so which means it's got to be in either or set, which if you remember correctly, I said you got to take both sets and just put them all together. So we're going to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. You put them all together. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. That would be choice 4. If it had the A and B, that's what they have in common. And the only ones that they have in common are 5 and 8. So in that case, it would be choice 2. But in this case, in this problem, it's B, or choice 4. Which represents the tangent of PLM? PLM, that's this angle right here. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. This is hypotenuse. So opposite over adjacent is 4 over 3. Choice 3. Can't get much easier. Mr. Stanton asked his students to write an algebraic expression on one piece of paper. He chose 4 students to go to the board and write their expression. Which student wrote an algebraic expression? Okay, this is an inequality. This is an equation. This is an equation, but this is an expression. Expressions have no equals or greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, all this stuff. So the only person that wrote is Meredith. Meredith wrote the expression. Remember, expressions have no equal signs. Nothing to solve. Holy mackerel. So S equals, this is the second kind of question like this. I wonder why they put 2 of these on here. We're just going to cross multiply. SR equals 2x plus t. I want x by itself, so I'm going to subtract the t. Remember, these can't be combined, so it's just SR minus t equals 2x. And you get x by itself, I divide by 2, divide by 2. There is my answer. RS and SR are the same thing. 2 problems left. Scatter plot. Holy crap. Let's do scatter plot. Remember, we got slope, so we're looking for y equals mx plus b. B is the y-intercept. Y-intercept's at exactly 25. That means it's got to be this one or this one, not these. Next question is, what's the slope? Now, slope's kind of difficult, so here's the change in 5 over 1. It's not 1 over 1, it's up 5 over 1. Be careful that you don't fall for that. That's choice 1, or that's choice 4. All right, so if I want in simplest form, see, you know what monkeys are going to do? They're going to go 2y plus 10 over y plus 5. Common denominator, keep the denominator and add the numerators. That's great. You're going to go, oh, yeah, that's the right answer. And then you go, crap, got it wrong. Because remember, we even did this on a test a couple times. You got to take out and you got to finish. Take out a 2, I'm left with y plus 5. All over y plus 5. And then the y plus 5's cancel, and I'm left with the actual answer, which is choice 2. All right, hopefully you guys did okay.